what is an adaptogen? So this is a newer concept in regards to how we might classify certain medicinal plants. This was developed by Russian scientists in the mid-20th century in their research to find ways to enhance productivity and performance of the working class, of their military, of athletes, especially without using amphetamines, right? That was a major thing, that we saw, for example, say in World War II. Amphetamines were used quite liberally and to enhance productivity and performance, especially, obviously in the military. And as we now know, those are not good drugs for people to be using really at all, and definitely not on a consistent basis. So the Russians were really interested in finding natural alternatives. And we find there's specific definitions, there's requirements that a substance has to meet in order to be classified as an adaptogen. And I really like to stress this point because I hear all the time all these people calling herbs adaptogens when they clearly don't understand what an adaptogen is and what the criteria are. Like for example, I keep hearing a lot of people saying cannabis is an adaptogen. Cannabis is not an adaptogen. I don't care what people say. It does not meet the criteria. It's a medicine. It has medicinal properties when used properly. But adaptogen, no, not an adaptogen. So there are three primary things that qualitative factors that a plant needs to meet to be classified as an adaptogen. For one, it has to have a non-specific action in the body by enhancing the body's capacity to resist environmental, physical, psychological, and emotional stressors. Now, what's interesting about that is that it's non-specific, which means in a way it's hard to pin down. But the way this was tested classically was through stress tests on mice. It's pretty brutal, actually. They would do the swim test on mice where they drop mice in a pool of water and see how long they swim before they give up. And then they would administer a substance and see, does it make the mouse swim for longer? I.e., does it allow that mouse to essentially resist those stressors that are placed on its system? Another qualifying factor, they must be non-toxic. And third, they must help the body maintain and re-regulate homeostasis by normalizing organ system function. So again, these are all very vague kind of terms, but that's the kind of the case, is that they are specifically vague. It's not, the definition of an adaptogen isn't that, it must bind, it has to have these chemicals that bind to this receptor that has this specific result. It's more, no, this is a very general quality that generally they have to have these results. Now, there's a few modern theories of how adaptogenic substances are able to achieve this ultimate result of allowing the body to adapt to changing circumstances and help specific organs maintain homeostasis. Generally speaking, the most accepted modern theory is that they are acting on the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, as well as the SAS or the sympathoadrenal system. These systems, now note, I didn't say adrenal glands, okay? We're speaking of, because with endocrinology, it's very difficult to isolate a single endocrine gland or single organs, because all these endocrine glands have these very intricate feedback loop mechanisms where something goes up and it turns this one off, and then that substance goes down, and then because it goes down, it flips another switch that turns that on, that goes downstream. They are cascades, and they're all very much so interconnected. But what we find with the HPA axis and the SAS is that this is a very wide-reaching, broad-spectrum system involving the nervous system and the endocrine system that then affects a host of physiological dynamics within the body, including immune system functioning, nervous system functioning, cardiovascular and flow of blood throughout the system, and of course the endocrine system. So these are all what I like to think of as systemic systems, right? Your nervous system scattered through your whole body. Endocrine system affects everything. Immunity affects everything. It's throughout the entire body. These systems are at the foundation of regulating, in a sense, the whole physiological organism. Now, when we look on a more biochemical level, we see very commonly these substances affect very specific markers, specifically catecholamines, cortisol, serotonin, nitric oxide, many different inflammatory markers and immune markers such as eicosanoids, cytokines, as well as influencing sex hormones in some, such as testosterone, estrogen, in some cases DHEA, etc. So we see that these plants with this adaptogenic quality seem to thematically influence the body on these levels. Now, they're not all created equal, and this is very important too, where it's very easy for people to think, oh, adaptogens all essentially do the same thing. This is a very simplistic way of thinking about these herbs that is wrong and can inevitably lead you to select the wrong ones. They all have very different qualities. Some of them are calming, some of them are stimulating, some of them are hot, some of them are warm, some of them are very, very drying, some of them are slightly moistening, some influence the nervous system more, some influence more the cardiovascular system, some are more immunologically oriented. They all have their nuance. And understanding the specificity of those nuances is critical for getting specific in selecting the appropriate adaptogen for your client. Remember, we don't just give adaptogens for fatigue. We give adaptogens for a person with a broad constellation of symptomatic patterns that should be addressed by proper selection of the specific adaptogen that matches that constellation. Now we see that many adaptogenic remedies obviously have other properties. So some tend to be more nervine and some stimulate the nervous system actually. Some can calm and relax the nervous system. Some of this is very dose dependent too. So if you take a moderate amount of it, it will be more calming. If you take a crazy large amount or a really concentrated extract, they can be very stimulating. Some of them have nootropic qualities and really aid in cognitive health, right? Mental focus, concentration, memory, things like that. Many of them will be inflammation modulating. Some of them have very profound influences on the immune system in the sense of some are very amphoteric, meaning that they have the ability to fine-tune immunological excesses and deficiencies, which, just to note on the side here, that many autoimmune conditions, oftentimes people think autoimmunity is immune excess. It's actually significantly more complicated than that. Many autoimmune conditions have attributes of immune excess and immune deficiency at the same time, or cycling through waves of immune excess followed by periods of immune deficiency. Basically, the immune system is totally out of sync with itself. And so the immune amphoterics and immunoregulators can really help to tamp down those excesses, strengthen those deficiencies. Very, very useful class of plants here. We have some adaptogens that are very well suited for autoimmune type conditions, and autoimmunity over the long term can have drastic impacts on the HPA axis, the sympatho-adrenal system, because when you're inflamed all the time, that's a stress on the body, right? We tend to think of stress as, oh, I've got a deadline, or I just ran 20 miles and my body just went through this period of stress, or I'm getting chased by a bear in the woods. But there's also physiological stress that it's not like the feeling of being stressed the way I think a lot of people tend to think of it. If you're chronically inflamed all the time on a biochemical and physiological level, that is stress to the body that can be very, very depleting over the long term. We also find that many adaptogens have very potent antioxidant properties. And actually, it was once theorized that it was the antioxidant attribute of adaptogens that was how they worked. This is definitely far from the truth, because we have many plants are powerfully antioxidant, but not even remotely close to being adaptogenic. So those two are very distinct properties, but many adaptogens are notably antioxidant, but that doesn't mean that all antioxidants are adaptogenic. There's some other interesting evidence about adaptogens in their capacity to actually protect the mitochondria, which, as noted, these are the energy generating organelles of the cell for manufacturing ATP. There's been some interesting research around adaptogens influencing and protecting mitochondria, possibly through their effect on what are called heat shock proteins. So there's lots of interesting research out there on some possible pharmacological mechanisms of action for adaptogens. But what we do know is that these are complex remedies that do complex things in the body. And I think we're really only beginning to scratch the surface in understanding what they're doing on a biochemical level. But regardless of that, what's most important is observing their medicinal virtue and what they're actually, how they're actually healing the body.